Hi guys, so today I want to talk about immutability in Rust, right? And I want to take a different slant on this. I know I've actually done a video on this immutability and variable in Rust before, but I want to take a different slant in actually teaching about trust this period and is so that we the reason actually behind this is so that we can be able to think in Rust, right? So we have a thinking pattern, right? So we have a way we can think and be able to understand concepts in Rust are not really much about syntax, and you can't really do much about it, right? So looking at my code here, this is just a very basic setup, right? And if you don't know about this setup, what you can do basically just to go to my channel, um and you first scroll down to my channel, you see it. You'll be able to see different setup tutorials on Rust, right? Where I was able to explain a lot of concepts, right, and what this um files really mean. Okay, so but we're not going into that today. So what you're focusing on is variables, right? Actually, mutability in variables and mutability, right, in Rust language. So looking at my code here, what we have here is just a simple function, an entry point, and this entry point has some variables in it, right? It just has only one variable, and we try to actually mutate, or we are trying to just change this variable to another um value, right? So the first value was 5, and we are trying to change the value here to something else, right? And we'll talk about this error later. But the major reason behind mutability in Rust, right? Why mutability exists in Rust is to actually help reduce, or to actually help stop variable bugs, right? When we talk about variable bugs, it is really common, right? Because when you are writing or dealing with thousands of code base or thousands of lines of code base, it's very common, right? And immutability in Rust helps actually prevent that, because by the time you just write this, by the time you've written this and you're trying to write this, let's say this, you just wrote this in maybe, let's say, line 600, and you're trying to change this variable somewhere in line 9000, the compiler will frown at you, right? And this is very beautiful in Rust language, right? Immutability helps prevent variable bugs. Actually, basically that's what it does, and it's very good. And why this is very important is because of safety and easy concurrency, right? When you're talking about safety, you're talking about the fact that your code will not start doing what you don't want, you really didn't intend for it to do. For example, right? For example, this I wasn't intending to change this code, right? I wasn't intending to change this code anywhere. So I just wrote let x equal to 5. This is the data type, right? This x equals to 5. And for some reasons in the future in my code, I decided to change this to 6, right? It was not my initial intention. My initial intention that this x will not be changed. Maybe for some reason, or for maybe, let's say, boredomness, or just have my head is clouded with stress, right? And I decided to just change this variable somewhere in between and change it to something else. But the Rust compiler will throw an error, right? And that's safety. That's it's very safe for you, because when imagine that the Rust compiler didn't show an error here, output you didn't actually intend for it to do. For you to track that error, it will take a lot of time. Like, it will take a lot of time, especially languages that actually don't, that care less about, that is not that strict, right? That's not statically typed, right? It will actually haunt you, right? But in Rust gives us that, and the pattern here is very simple, right? The design pattern here is very simple, and how this component interact is that this is what it is. You're declaring a variable, right? Pay close attention. You're declaring a variable, and the variable you're declaring, you name it X, right? And you store the value 5 on it, right? And with the data type I32. Now, Ross knows that no matter what happens in the future, programmer or you didn't intend to change this variable in the future, right? And so it is being locked. Like there's something like, let's say, let me use a word like Rust locks this variable for you. You can't change it in the future, right? And and if you try in the future to try to change this variable, right? Rust will throw an error to tell you that you are trying to assign twice an immutable variable. So let's just run this code and see what we have. And what this is saying is that this was first assigned and you're trying to reassign this here, which was not your initial intention. Your initial intention was not to change this variable anywhere. And so Ross is trying to warn you that this wasn't our initial agreement. So our initial agreement was that this won't be changed for any reason. And now you're trying to actually break our agreement, our covenant, our contract. And so Ross is trying to throw an error here. And so this is how these components interact with one another. So first of all, you've written a variable and named it whatever you named it and stored it for any reason, right? And now it's you try to change it some, right? And we all know that by default, variables are immutable. Variables can't be changed. Variables doesn't have the ability to change by default, actually, right? Which there are actually ways to actually manipulate this, but by default, it can't be changed for any reason, right? And now you trying to change it is you're trying to actually break the rules guiding Rust language or guiding the compiler language or whatever, right? And this will throw an error, right? This is how immutability actually saves you a lot of stress, right? Because immediately you're typing it, the compiler is already frowning. Just is already frowning that this isn't what you were intending to do, right? And now the design actually exists for you. Pay close attention on bug issues, right? For you to be able to avoid some error issues, for you to be able to avoid some mistakes, right? Imagine you maybe you're writing in JavaScript or any other language that is all statically typed, and you made this kind of error, you made this kind of mistake, right? You'll be expecting a certain kind of result, and your code is giving you a certain kind of result without actually telling you what is wrong with it, right? It's it's a bug actually that it will take you a lot of time for you to fix. Why it might be simple for us here of code actually is nothing, right? And if you're using Rust, it's very you can't run into such kind of errors. But let's assume you're using JavaScript or any other language, right? And you have like 20,000 lines of code. For you to find this error will take you a lot of time. It's strenuous. It's strenuous. And if somebody else is reading your code base, they will be confused, right? And the long just that no matter what is happening in this code base, this can be changed. This variable can be changed. I cannot see x anywhere in this code base that has the value of y, or have the value of 5 or 6, or have the value of 7. Right? It can't happen. Like, this is what you're telling a reader, somebody that is going through your code. You're telling the person that this can be changed. I'm not intending to change this in the future. And for some reason, the person is still going through your code and now saw that the x variable was changed. And it's very, very confusing. Like, it means that you don't know what you're doing, or you're not certain, or this code wasn't originally yours. It gives this kind of confused vibes, right? And it makes your code not to be understood, right? Imagine somebody is doing your code. It gives a negative vibes, actually. Personally, it gives a negative vibes, right? And actually, that's why actually Rust is beautiful. That's why Rust is beautiful. And some of the trade-offs of these things, that actually using mutability in Rust, it restricts flexibility, right? Imagine that it doesn't give you that free will to do what you want to do, right? It doesn't give you that free will to do what you want to do. Let's say flexibility. It doesn't give you the free will to do what you want to do. So, for example, let me explain what I mean. So, let's say here your initial intention was to make this thing not to be changed, and free will people, now you decided to change this thing in the future. You decided that I have the right to do what I want to do, right? And I really want to do, I want to change this variable regardless of what is happening, right? That's free will, right? That's free will to do what you want to do. And maybe you came to line 900 and you decided to change this. So why I'm using these big numbers, so that you know that this is just a basic something. It might not make more sense to you. You might be like, I can figure it out, right, on your own, but it is hard, right? It is hard for you to be, if it's a large code base. And now that's why us is very, very beautiful, right? And so the one of the trade-offs on this immutability, just that it doesn't give you that flexibility to do what you want, right? To change a variable that you want to change, right? That flexibility is not there. These are one of the trade-offs, right, when using immutability in Rust. And one of the failure scenarios is when you're trying to, let's say you have a code base that accepts input, right? This code base accepts input. Let's say it accepts username, it accepts password, and whatever, right? It accepts users input, right? And so you know that when something accepts users input, it is dynamic, right? It changes, the value changes. So let's say what accepts users input is x, this x, right? So this x cannot or should not be this, right? It shouldn't be mutable. There is a way, there should be an alternative where you can be able to change this value and your compiler will not frown at this, right? So the failure scenario is that when you're trying to actually example, right? There are so many other examples. When you're trying to accept users input, or you want to get users information, immutability is not the best option, right? It's not an option, right? It's not something you want to opt for. So this is actually one of the failure scenarios you can actually come across, you want to actually pay attention to when you're writing immutability in Rust. Or these are the things maybe you should have at the back of your mind. There are a lot of other stuff, right? There are a lot of other failure scenarios that can actually, you should actually have at the back of your mind. But I'm giving you this template so that you'll be able to understand um how to really think in Rust, right? How to really think in any programming language at all, right? And so, majorly, what we've actually achieved now is we came to the conclusion that, excuse me, we came to the conclusion that mutability in Rust actually saves us bugs, right? Variable bugs. That's what it saves us. It saves us that variable bug stress. That 2 hours you be going through or running through your code base, Rust saves you that time. So immediately you're typing that you're trying to change a variable that you didn't intend to change in the first place, the compiler will automatically frown at it, and you will see it basically as it is, right? And so the best solution here is just not to change it and leave it as it is, and run your code again, and boom, it will print just printed out what it should print out. And so this is basically what immutability in Rust looks like. Right? This is what it's actually gives. This is a vibes it actually ensues. This is what immutability looks like, and this is the beauty of immutability in Rust, right? Which other languages actually doesn't give you that flex, give you that ability to right when it comes to mutability. And yeah, that's that for this video. Okay, see you guys in my next video. And in my next video I'll be talking about mutability, right? Mutability, as you know, or as I'll teach, is actually the brother to this, and it helps you to be able to actually change values. See you guys in my next video.